Good evening, everyone. I'm Magdalene from ITIS Capital, and I welcome you all to our third quarter investor call 2020. Thank you all for joining the call. At this time, all our participants will be in listen-only mode, and after a presentation, we will have the Q&A session. So today, our focus will be on the recent performance of the portfolio and an update in the market. Naveen, our CEO and principal of ITIS Capital, will walk you through it. With that, it's now my pleasure to turn the call over to Naveen Chandra Mohan.
Thank you, Maggie, for the kind introduction. I take this opportunity again to thank everyone for taking the time out to attend the call. We've had a fairly eventful quarter, the June to September 2020 quarter that's just gone by. And it's been 6 months since India as a nation went into its first lockdown. 6 months ago, during the middle of the panic that the economy and the markets were in due to a global supply chain shutdown, it would have been fairly presumptuous to talk about markets being higher by 30%, alongside discussing about potential possibilities of pockets of where the next phase of growth would actually come from. However, that's precisely where we are at today. And history has a funny way of rhyming, not less repeating itself across multiple crashes that we go through as investors. As the economy comes out of COVID, where we slowly continue to get cautiously comfortable around life restarting around us, the relevance of discussing markets, quote unquote, begins to lose its relevance. Instead, what would be important for us as investors going forward is to discuss specific companies and business models which will continue to thrive in the new world. I want to start a quarterly call this time with the final slide that I had presented in the previous quarterly call at the end of June. Many investors back then had asked us for our view on the markets in June, and we had summarized it in this one slide towards the end of the call. The reason I'm highlighting this before we review our quarter is to highlight the fact that none of our thoughts from the last quarter has actually changed. It's not a function of whether we are vindicated or not about our views, but it's about a function of whether we constantly scrutinize our views on a regular basis and highlight any changes in the interim to our investors and partners. There again, I'd specifically mentioned that markets do not crash when majority of the investor base expects it, and that's what we were back in June. Valuations were expensive because we were coming off a low base, but we had clearly mentioned that that was a function of liquidity, and we expect that to stay. COVID had certainly disrupted certain businesses. However, there were certain businesses that were going through tailwinds. As a fund manager at that point of time and in the future, our job will always not to be to mimic the index. And I'd also mentioned that it was important for us to follow the flows both in US and China. Moving on, we've had a strong performance through 2020. Our fund is up 19.7% this year being defined as Jan to September, and has outperformed the Nifty by close to 27%. Since inception too, which is Jan 2017, our cumulative return over the benchmark is at a healthy 64.6% outperformance against the benchmark. Increasingly, I believe that the performance at a portfolio level will be more of a function of individual businesses and less so about the performance of the broader markets. Why I say this, I will explain during the course of the call. And it also goes back to highlighting what our core philosophy as a fund is and will continue to be. ITIS has generated a cumulative return of 19.66% on an annualized basis since inception for the investors. Over the same period, the Nifty is annualized at around 8.84%, and the mid-cap index is annualized around 4.3%. Just for context, the small cap index has been roughly flat. All of these are IRR-based numbers. At ITIS, our philosophy has always been around an active approach to fund management, where we will retain the flexibility to invest across market caps. In the market-oriented world, we call this a multi-cap portfolio. Our role at ITIS, which I will always emphasize in every call, is to ensure we minimize our drawdowns, which is another way of measuring downside as far as we are concerned. So I wanted to highlight this through an example. Vanguard, which is one of the world's oldest mutual fund ETF provider, however you looked at it, they conducted a data analysis of their investors. So effectively, you're talking about close to an 80-year history, right? And their flagship fund, which was their largest fund, which saw almost a return of 100x over a period of 25 years, they basically wanted to see. So we're talking about the marquee of the marquee names. Right? So if someone likes a brand, Vanguard it is. That's how the global world perceives it. So you're not talking about any random fund manager. You're not talking about a random shop. You're talking about the best out there as far as a brand is concerned. So they wanted to do this analysis to see out of this 100x returns over a 25-year period, how many of their investors actually saw this through. So out of every 10,000 investors that Vanguard had, only 3 investors lived through this upside. So effectively what this means, to reiterate, out of every 10,000 investors in Vanguard who saw a 25-year period, who actually saw through this, only 3 of them stayed through this. So we always talk about equity as a long-term investment. It's a nice word to use, nice word to market, nice word to hear. So the idea of long term is very nice to hear. It's hard to stay long term when your fund manager takes the journey of heavy drawdowns along the way. So assume that I am basically saying that my investors need to be with me for a long term, but every 3 years I show a 50% drawdown. Now investors are not going to be that patient. It's hard because to see a 50% drawdown on your portfolio and still live through a long term philosophy, it affects the psychology of most investors. So the only way that we can enhance the longevity of our investors is to protect the capital during the periods of drawdown that the market sees, which is precisely the reason we just not look at how we did during bull markets, but what is most important is how we do during bear markets. So if we look at the quarterly performance of our fund since inception and break that down during up markets and down markets, up markets are those where the Nifty had a positive return in the quarter. Down markets are those where the Nifty had a negative returns in the quarter. We've consistently outperformed during most of the up markets. So we outperformed 7 out of 11 quarters in the up markets. But more importantly, we've handsomely outperformed 3 out of 4 quarters in the down market. And that's where a lot of our alpha has actually come. I wanted to spend some time this quarterly call to discuss our philosophy because it's important as an investor. If I put my self in the shoes of an investor, I would like to answer this question myself. Why should an investor choose ITIS? And the only way, apart from the team, apart from the track record, that someone can say that they understand our philosophy is to explain our philosophy in simple terms. And every investor should have a place for a fund manager in the portfolio and have an understanding of what that portfolio and fund manager brings from a perspective into their own portfolio. So that's why the philosophy of the fund manager and the fund management team is extremely important. So to simplify this philosophy, we have defined our framework, which is our guiding thesis around every investment that we make. We call this the GPCG framework. So what that means is the following. We are essentially growth investors in India. While we look at underlying balance sheets, we are effectively buying businesses that are seeing growth in free cash flows. We care about the price at which we invest. Growth at any price is not something that we believe in. You cannot buy growth when you are paying huge obscene valuations. It might work out well for a certain set of investors, a certain set of fund managers, but not for us. So growth and price are the first 2 filters that every investment that we take on goes through. And finally, the most important filter, we can have a great business growing at 20 to 25% growth rate. Maybe it's even available at a great price. But if it doesn't go through the corporate governance filter, we are not looking at taking it into our board. For us, we are backing owners who have a track record of sensible capital allocation across cycles. So, in its essence, GPCG This will be our guiding factor. And one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to come out with a white paper which will explain this with further detail around examples of which are the companies that went in through this framework, which are the companies that we actually excluded through this framework, both from an entry as well as an exit perspective, to give our investors a better understanding of how this framework will actually operate. You can expect this to come through into your inboxes as well as in a presentation form over the course of the next 2 to 4 weeks. Moving on, activity in the quarter, there were absolutely no changes made in the portfolio. I'm basically going to over the next 5 minutes break down our latest investment to discuss the thesis behind the same, because there were a lot of queries post the call from investors in our previous call. So IEX was a position that we built for many investors in the previous quarter, not in this quarter, but in the previous quarter. So I wanted to take this opportunity to give you a background of IEX, what was our thought process and the value proposition. So to put it very simply and to give a basic background, the opportunity and roadblock for IEX was it was operating in a regulated industry. So IEX is an exchange through which the power market, which was predominantly long-term and offline, was taken into the exchange. So IEX was built around a few following premises: a strong leadership team comprised of fairly credible and insightful industry insiders who understood the opportunity. We look at this as a large $100 billion opportunity in India, with inefficient market undergoing powerful structural changes, most specifically around legislation which permits industrial customers to buy power from any seller, which is what an exchange is supposed to do, rather than just the state utility. So a nice thing to actually do is to look at evolution of such markets from an international perspective and where does India stand. To put things in perspective around the growth potential of IEX still is only handling less than 10% of the trades, of the 10% in India. So effectively, you're talking about a very, very minuscule portion of the total market coming to the exchange, which is expected because you are talking about a mind shift change happening where people who are trading mostly power offline through long-term contracts, trading it through an exchange and managing their inventory on a dynamic basis. You're not going to expect this. This effectively is, we've already seen this happen. We've seen this happen over the course of the next 10 years. This could be a multi-year opportunity as far as we are concerned. Now, just to give you a context to this around what happened around creating this exchange. Before IEX, the distribution companies were getting into contracts which were predominantly long-term in nature. Now, one of the problems for the long-term contracts is they have to pay the capacity charge, even if they are not using the capacity. What that means is, even if I don't use the power that I actually want, I need to pay the charge. So with the opening up of short-term contracts, this helped the participants plan their capacity a lot more dynamically. So I don't need to plan for my capacity for the next 10 years, which really doesn't make sense. You want the ability for both the short term and the long term to be in place, which is what is going to function and change this market. So it makes sense for the distribution companies to buy their base demand on these PPAs, which is a long-term contract, and structure the peak demands on exchanges. And that was the need for IEX to even come in. So with this as the background, just quickly touching upon IEX's market share and what's the valuation at which we are talking about this exchange being available. So IEX has gained market share predominantly on trading short-term funds at the expense of other in-state trading licensees. So how does IEX makes money? They charge 2 paise as an exchange for the trade per unit, both from the buyer and the seller, which is what goes into its revenue. While NSE, which is the National Stock Exchange, has a power exchange called PXIL, which stands for Power Exchange India Limited. and they have a fairly negligible market share when compared to IEX. IEX is pretty much, as we speak today, a proxy monopoly. Now, one thing that we like to do is to highlight the risks. Every investment has a risk. And considering that you're dealing with power, which is a regulated industry in India, it clearly has a risk on the regulation. Now, the regulated nature of the business means not everyone is going to be open to a transparent exchange-based way of trading power. It's going to take some time. We've seen the first steps being taken in the last decade. There is a potential possibility of tailwinds coming through if the government, end of the day, has the mindset to do it. Then the current CEO, who we had fairly high, who had a fairly high pedigree, him being the head of Asia Pac for HP before moving to IEX, left for personal reasons. So reinstating their former CEO, we obviously want to be monitoring this to see what is the impact from a medium-term perspective onto the business. So the reason I thought we'll go slightly deeper into the business was to try and understand and explain why we bought IEX, what is the market size potential ahead of us, and to explain the risks that we have in owning a business like IEX. We have a much smaller exposure in IEX versus rest of the other, some of the other companies in our portfolio. So out here, what I've done is to basically break down our top 10 exposures across clients at an aggregate level to give you an exposure of what has happened. If you look at it from our previous quarter, not much has changed. We've not added any stock, neither have we trimmed down any exposure. So this is a slide that I will always re-emphasize on. People who've been attending our calls would know this. This is to give again, what does GPCG do? It gives us a framework around which we think. Why should investors look at investing in ITIS? Because we're predominantly growth investors. We care about the price and we care about the corporate governance. So what that means is there are certain kinds of businesses that will not fit into our portfolio by its very definition. These are cyclical businesses. These are very capex heavy, leveraged focused businesses, and our portfolio will be towards growth. And here we've also highlighted where we'll be cautious. As always, I want to basically leave you with some final thoughts before we finish the call from our side, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. Our investing framework will be governed by the GPCG framework. It's fair to say that we are in an environment of easy liquidity. Finding good quality free cash flow businesses which are reasonably priced is not going to be easy. And it's clear that for any investor who's gone through the last 6 months, trying to time the market is a futile effort. And I am basically questioning the use of the word market because at the end of the day, what's more relevant is to talk about businesses and their growth. We will maintain a sizable exposure of cash in the portfolio, especially for the newer investors. The reason why we feel it's appropriate is because in a market that is functioning by liquidity and that liquidity translating into growth, we certainly do believe that patience pays off. It's not necessary to rush in order to invest. If that's the mandate, I think you have good quality ETFs already doing that. As a fund manager, it's important to ensure that you're buying the good business at the right price. Here again, discussing the market will not result in a good framework to evaluate risk. It's discussing individual businesses that will. Last point I would like to make. Today, we all like to foresee where is that next volatile event going to come from. I always say this, the most talked about next event is necessarily not the next risk we face in terms of volatility and uncertainty in the market. What I'm referring to is the US elections. Because every investor call that I have on a one-on-one basis, I am asked for my view on the US elections. End of the day, it's another view. Considering that everyone's eye is on this, is that the place where I see the next event risk coming from? Not necessary. So that's how I would like to end the call with my parting thoughts.